Have you wondered if intermittent fasting could be helpful for you if you're in menopause or late perimenopause? Well, check out today's video and we'll talk more about that. As I've talked about a lot, and you may have experienced yourself, which I've experienced too, in perimenopause and menopause, you can have weight gain and you can have shifts in metabolism. It can be very frustrating. It can feel like there are no rules anymore. There's nothing you can do. It feels very out of your control. And I'm not saying there's nothing you can do. It just can feel that way quite often. I know I've felt that way before. So I wanted to give some hope and some information and some different tools, and that's the purpose of the more recent focus of this channel. So you may have seen my last video, which was all about the Lumen device and metabolic tracking devices with metabolism and like how that can help your metabolism in peri and menopause. And today I'm going to talk about intermittent fasting, like I said. But before we go on, please check out my blog, perimenopause.help, because you don't have to take notes. I've got a blog on this exact topic and on most of my topics on the channel. Also, hit the like button and the subscribe button if you like what you're seeing here and you want to support the channel. I deeply and greatly appreciate that. And share it out if you feel like anybody you know could benefit from this information. So now, intermittent fasting, what is it? There can be all different types of intermittent fasting. There can be the more extreme types where people are going 5 days without eating, or water fast where they're drinking water for 5 days and not eating. It's not really what I'm focusing on here, although there are definitely mitochondrial and anti-aging benefits and metabolism benefits from that kind of fasting. But what I'm focusing on here is some different, more common and more sustainable kind of techniques of fasting, which would be the 16 to 18 hour fast with a 6 to 8 hour window, or the 14-hour fast with a 10-hour eating window, or the 5 to 2 fast where you eat normally for 5 days and then restrict your calories significantly for 2 days. Those are the ones I see more relatable to most people, more research about, and then helping with the menopausal shifts and perimenopause shifts. The thing with fasting is a lot of people are trying a lot of expensive things. A lot of people are doing the glucagon-like peptides, the injectable medications for weight loss. And that's okay. I have a video on that, but it's expensive, and fasting is something we can all do. It can save us money because we're not spending as much money on food, and it can really help our mitochondrial health, which is the powerhouse of our brain, and help our metabolism. So the mitochondrial health can help our metabolism. The fasting can help our metabolism in separate ways. It can help our insulin sensitivity so that we're not as insulin resistant, and then more belly fat or risk of diabetes increases. And then intermittent fasting can also have anti-aging benefits too. So a lot of benefits from intermittent fasting. And just to touch on briefly before we go into intermittent fasting is, as I've talked about in a lot of my other videos, and you can check those out if you want to dive more into the phases of perimenopause, but the phases of perimenopause, we can have quite a hormonal roller coaster where our estrogen goes up, our progesterone is gradually declining in the early stages of perimenopause, and then we're seeing some estrogen dominance where we can accumulate more weight, and our metabolism shifts, our mood shifts, our sex drive shifts, our ability to build muscle shifts. There's all kinds of things that happen on top of that. And then you can have some weight gain, and then you can also continue or start to have some weight gain if you didn't start in the first phase of perimenopause. In the second phase, where the estrogen's coming down more, the progesterone's continuing to decline, and then you go into menopause, which is the day you've gone a year without a period, and everything else is post-menopause. So we can have unwanted weight gain, we can have muscle loss, we can have increased risk of heart disease and osteoporosis, as well as sleep disturbances, waking up at 3 to 4 a.m. and not being able to fall back asleep, which can impact your metabolism in a bad way. So it's not all doom and gloom. I've got lots of videos on how to help yourself during perimenopause and menopause and how to try to get out of some of those ruts that it creates. Now let's talk about how intermittent fasting can help. So it's like I said, it can help improve brain health, first of all, and that's super helpful because we have a lot of brain fog during perimenopause and menopause. Also, when we improve our insulin sensitivity, we reduce our risk of type 2 diabetes, We lessen our joint pain and stiffness. Sorry, I'm going to start over on that part. So also what we can see is reduced inflammation, so less joint pain and stiffness, improved insulin sensitivity, reducing our risk of type 2 diabetes and our belly fat accumulation. And whenever we decrease inflammation and we improve our insulin sensitivity, we reduce our risk of heart disease. And then I've done fasting videos before on digestion and how that can improve digestion. So if you're interested in that, check those out. That was from quite a few years ago, I think maybe like 2019 or 2020. So there's not a one-size-fits-all approach for fasting. I would say from experience and research that when you're in the earlier stages and still cycling with perimenopause, you can do some fasting, but not as quite of a longer fast. Whereas when hormones are, yes, bottomed out a bit more, but more steady, for lack of a better word, in postmenopause or late perimenopause, you may be better with you may be able to do the 16 to 18 hour fast better than you could when the hormone roller coaster is happening during early perimenopause. But for any beginner, I would first recommend talking to your doctor. I'm not your healthcare provider. This is not medical advice on this channel. It's just what's helped myself and my patients. And then you need to go and apply it through talking with your healthcare provider and make sure it's safe for you. So you can start out slow. Anybody should start out slow no matter what hormonal phase you are in. And that would be, if you haven't been fasting at all, just try to give yourself 12 hours between, let's say you have dinner at 7, and then you do your thing, go to bed. Whenever you go to bed, usually best time to go to bed for your hormones is around 9 or 10 o'clock at night, somewhere in the 10 o'clock hour maybe. Get up maybe 5 to 6, and then you don't have breakfast until, or don't eat anything else until 7. So that would be 7 to 7. You got your 12-hour eating window and your 12-hour fasting window. Try that for a few days. If you're a type 1 diabetic, it may not be applicable for you because when you go into lower glycemic or lower glucose stores, it could be dangerous when you're on insulin. And then with type 2 diabetes, I don't know your situation, so definitely talk to your doctor. But if you tend to, without diabetes, but tend to have low blood sugar, it's something definitely you might not be a good fit for you. But starting out with that 12 hours and then giving that maybe a week or two, you could take a few days off, but make it most days that you're doing that. Then you could start shifting to that 13 hours of fasting. So let's say stopping eating at 6 and then starting at 7 a.m. So you'd have that 13-hour window, work your way into 14 hours. You see most of the benefits at 14 hours or above. So working your way into 14 hours, then you've got, let's say you have dinner at 5, still have breakfast at 7. Now, the reason I'm inching dinner earlier and earlier, if you've seen any of my other videos on insulin sensitivity, the bigger meals in the morning are better, more carbs in the morning, moderate meal at lunch with a moderate amount of carbs, and then like very little carbs in the evening meal and a small meal. If that doesn't work for you, I've tried to work that out with quite a few patients, and it works for some, and some are like, doesn't fit in my life. That's fine. But trying not to eat within 3 hours of going to bed is always better for your digestion and better for your sleep and better for your insulin sensitivity. So fitting that rule in there if you can. Now, when you're going into the later perimenopause or postmenopause stage, then you can play around with 16 to 18 hours of fasting. I find 18 to be too much for me. I can do anywhere between 14 and 16, but everybody's different. I tend towards a lower blood sugar, but not a clinically low blood sugar, so you got to play around with it. But there's lots of good research when you get into the 16 to 18 hour window, how good that is for anti-aging, for brain health, for gut health, and for insulin sensitivity. So you got to do what feels right for you. And then there's the 5 to 2 approach, where you have more flexibility in 5 days of the week, not eating like crazy, but eating, moderate amount. I would say still trying not to eat within 3 hours of going to bed. And then you have 2 days where you eat only 500 to 600 calories. Not a good fit for me, but it might be for you. And there's lots of great information or studies on that. about how that can shift the metabolism into, I talked about carb burning and fat burning and help boost like your metabolic flexibility. This 5-2 approach can do that along with the other methods of intermittent fasting. So those are just some ideas to try. Again, not everybody should do intermittent fasting, so definitely talk to your provider about it. Some important facts that I talk about, again, you don't have to take notes, it's all in my blog that I'm referencing here, is try to get your protein. Make sure you get enough protein, so 30 to 40 grams of protein at every meal, at least. Some people may need more, everybody's different, especially if you're only eating 2 meals a day, you're getting that longer fasting window, then trying to get 40 or more at every meal is good. Eating 30 to 35 grams of fiber. I talk about fiber quite often. It's super important for our digestive systems and our detox pathways. And then avoiding highly processed foods. So just because you're fasting doesn't mean you go crazy when you're eating. So, you want to avoid foods with more than 5 grams of added sugar. You want to avoid foods with lots of added sugar in them, or highly processed sugars like high fructose corn syrup. You want to keep track of sugar. I always say keep it at 20 grams of added sugar or less. That does not include fruit sugar. Granted, some people could go crazy with fruit and eat too much sugar from fruit, but generally that's not the case. So when you're counting your 20 grams, I would say to just include the added sugar, not fruit sugar. Fruit juice, though, I'm not a fan of because that goes straight to your blood sugar. So when I say fruits are okay, I'm talking about actual fruit with fiber and more vitamins in it and minerals sometimes. So those are my tips. Now, exercise and fasting, I talk about this in the blog that I wrote on this. You got to play around with that too. You may feel too weak to exercise in the beginning, so maybe, holding off on exercising, especially during your fasting window. But as your body adjusts, trying to get 25 to 30 or more minutes of cardiovascular exercise and at least 30 minutes, 3 days a week of strength training. As I've talked about before in some of my other videos, when you're in peri and postmenopause, you may want to lean more towards strength training, but definitely getting your cardio, but maybe more days of strength training than what I'm saying here to help maintain your muscle, because you do lose more muscle. And then if you start to feel your blood sugar dropping during a fast and you're exercising, break your fast, go grab a quick carb snack like berries, an apple, orange, or even in that case, some fruit juice if you need really fast sugar, and then follow it up with a meal with protein, fat, and carbs in it. So any questions or comments that aren't, unique individual medical situations that you want me to answer for you because I can't be your provider, but any general comments or questions, I love those. I welcome them in the comments. Thank you so much for joining me. I do post now usually every 2 weeks with some short videos in between. I would love any ideas you have for future videos. So thanks so much for being here. Remember to like, subscribe, and share to keep the channel growing. I truly and greatly appreciate that, and I look forward to seeing you in the next video.